You're smarter than you think. Because isn't that the bank?
I don't know. You're richer than you think you are. Oh. You're smarter than you think. Come to TD.
Oh, that's the sequel of the mixed up quotables game. Is like mixed up slogans.
Advertising slogans. Yeah. We're back. We're officially back.
It's perfect. Welcome back to the Modern Lady Podcast. You're listening to episode 107. Hi, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lindsay, and today we are talking about taking that first step, or as my dad would say, get her done.
Author, entrepreneur, and photographer James Clear writes in his book Atomic Habits that, quote, many people think they lack motivation when what they really lack is clarity, end quote. Isn't that just the mental shift we need sometimes? When we struggle with getting her done, it often helps to have a clear plan, and plans usually have a step 1. So, where do we begin? We're kicking off season 4 with this question in mind and at heart.
But first, this podcast is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. How about you? Do you want more from the Modern Lady? Become a Patreon supporter, and for just $5 a month, you will have exclusive access to our sister podcast, The Friday Finishing School. Find us by going to patreon.com/The Modern Lady Podcast. Another way that you can support the show is by subscribing to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. We are also so thankful for every rating, review, and comment that you leave us. Your reviews on iTunes help new listeners discover us.
This week's shout out goes to Same Liz P, who left us a 5-star review on iTunes and said, quote, I love this podcast. As a new mom, Michelle and Lindsay really speak to my heart when it comes to family and the home and faith. This podcast, however, is for all ladies of all ages and backgrounds. They really put a lot of effort into it. I love how interesting their topics are and look forward to listening to them while I clean and look after my home. End quote. Well, thank you so much, Same Liz P, for taking the time to rate the podcast and leave us this comment. What a lovely message to come back to after our break. And if you would like to leave us a comment, you can do so on our website, www.themodernlady1950.wordpress.com, or you can leave us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, where you can find us at The Modern Lady Podcast. But before we get into today's chat, Lindsay has our Modern Lady Tip of the Week.
It's that time of the year again. Back to school, cool evenings, and soup. Thanks to listener extraordinaire Jenna Gernon, I'm going to explore soup etiquette because it can't possibly be as simple as just lifting a spoon to your mouth and eating it, can it? Let's start with serving soup. There are 7 different kinds of soup bowls. Get your pencils ready because here we go. Soup plate, coupe bowl, soup cereal bowl, covered soup bowl, lug soup bowl, cream soup bowl, and the classic bouillon cup. According to the website etiquettescholar.com, it is the temperature and texture of the soup that determines the bowl's shape. For example, a thick, chunky soup stays hot longer, so it goes into a shallow, wide bowl in order to cool it down. But a smooth soup is served in a deep bowl to retain its heat. Now the history of the soup spoon. I know you've been waiting for this. There are 2 different types of soup spoons, the Western soup spoon and the Chinese spoon. The Western spoon is smaller than a tablespoon, but with a deeper bowl for holding liquid. The idea of having a separate spoon for soup started in the 18th century. In the early days, the spoons were all different shapes, oval, pointed, shallow, or deep. In the 19th century, the shape became standardized and is what we know today. Most people don't have dedicated soup spoons in their own kitchens, but will encounter them when served soup at restaurants. A Chinese spoon, and yes, that is its proper name, is a regular utensil in Chinese cuisine. Almost all of their soup spoons are made of ceramic, although the earliest versions date back to the Bronze Age and were made of bone. In ancient China, the spoon was far more common than chopsticks because the most common food was millet, which was made into congee, which is what we know of today as gruel. As the technology improved for flour milling and with the advent of yummy dumplings and noodles, chopsticks took over in the 10th century. Today, the Chinese soup spoon is still an everyday item with smaller versions being used to eat with and larger ones used as serving utensils. Okay, now the table is set, proper bowl size is chosen, and the correct underplates and spoons are ready. Next week, we will learn how to actually eat the soup.
Wow, well, there goes my easy go-to meal for the fall. Things just got really complicated. But you know what? Listening to you talk about the bowl sizes
Mm-hmm.
is one of those things that well, I didn't know before you just told us, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes so much sense. I can't believe I didn't think of it before, like how the thicker soups hold heat longer, so you want it
Mm-hmm.
to be in a shallower dish so that it cools down. I think that totally makes sense. That's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? And obviously someone else has.
And while I didn't think about it like that, it made me feel less guilty about the multiple different sizes of soup bowls that I own. You were
Yeah.
just with me when I bought more
Yes.
bowls, right? I'm like, I actually need this shape now. So I didn't understand the science behind it, but now I do. So
Mm.
less guilt.
You're smarter than you think. And we're back. After a long summer break, we find ourselves, perhaps like many of you, trying to get back into the swing of things. The problem is, sometimes we don't know where exactly to begin or how to start, right, Lindsay?
Yes, I'm laughing because my opening line too is "We are back." You and I
Yeah.
both wrote the same opening line, so
Yes,
we're
it's
still
very
in
exciting.
tune with each other, which is awesome.
Oh,
And Michelle, I was thinking, isn't it so nice to feel so rested after our long summer breaks? We kid because we're not rested at all.
oh.
We had a phone conversation yesterday, and I think I can speak for
Mhm.
both of us when I just share that we're both feeling flustered and stressed and overwhelmed, and that we both realize that if we're already feeling this way, the lead up to Christmas is just going to get
Right.
harder, right? So it's time that we maybe make a few changes right now.
Yeah, like we took this long break and we kept saying like, "Are we ready yet? No, not yet. No, not
Mm-hmm.
yet. No, not yet." And then after a certain point we're like, "Well, maybe we're just meant to do it, to get it
Mm-hmm.
done." Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this really sparked this conversation of, sometimes you can't wait until things are perfect or the timing is just right. Sometimes things just need to happen. And
Yeah.
so what do you do when maybe emotionally or mentally you're not quite there yet?
Yeah.
It has to get done.
Yeah, and so that's like this episode's meant to be a gentle kick in the pants for you and I, right? And we
Yes.
suspect that many of you are feeling the same way. Now, we did do that episode last year that we both really loved, the Can't Even Clean Up. And while it's along the same lines as today's episode, what we really want to do today is just come up, like you were saying, with one suggestion, like just one first step. And you'll share
Mhm.
one and I'll share one. And I had noticed in a lot of like the women's groups that I'm part of on social media that there's usually like three categories that most people will post that they need help just getting started in. So that's what we've done. We've taken these three categories that you and I both need to have a bit of a wake up call in, and that we think many of you probably do too. And then we're each just going to share our one first step that we're going to do.
Mhm. Yeah, this reminded me of a podcast that I actually haven't listened to in a while, but I used to almost every single week when it came out was the Next Right Thing podcast
Mm.
by Emily P. Freeman. And it was a short podcast, but what she was encouraging people to do was not take on that huge bite, like
Uh,
taking it all on at once. What is the next right thing? And so I think that's a really good complementary thought to put with this episode that we're going to record today is that you can think about this as like, okay, this might be my goal, but let's not start at the completion. What's the next right thing that I can do to get myself going in the right direction?
I love that so much because, as you and I have admitted many times, we are very much a do all the things type people
Yeah,
because we
yes.
enjoy it, right? You're
Hmm.
sanguine. I have some sanguine under my choleric tendencies. And so we both get
Yes.
really excited about first steps, actually.
Yeah.
Um, but we take such a giant leap that, yeah, we fall. We end up tripping
Mm,
sometimes. And
hmm.
so we both need to just try that smaller step. Okay, so Michelle, let's just start. And we can share how we've, I guess, let ourselves go, right? In terms of health, wellness, fitness, prayer life, everything. we'll just we'll
We'll
just
bear
lay
it
it all
all
on the
here.
table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with health and wellness. Now, I wanted to start here because this is something that I realized that I really dropped the ball on, but I realized this last spring. And at that time, I made the decision to focus again on my health. And I made a lot of changes starting in the spring and that I've consistently been working on throughout the summer. But sadly, I'm not seeing the results that I wish I was seeing because I have been working hard. So when I stepped back and I'm currently doing this and I'm reevaluating, those things that I've been doing, I'm like, okay, I definitely need to make some more changes. I need to shake things up once again. And so it's not like I'm going, well, I failed at all that. No, I've done my best with that, but I need to make those changes. So I had an honest discussion with myself about what's working and what's not working. And I realized too that it's not just about fitness and nutrition for me in terms of health and
Mm.
wellness, right? It's also my general sense of wellness. Dare I say my self care, right?
Mm.
And my husband, God bless him, he also gently encouraged me to buy some new clothes this summer to just really start taking care of myself in a way that I had stopped kind of doing. So, all of that to say that if I'm going to take this one first step forward, the one thing I think I would do is just start with one goal. Just one goal, not
Mm.
20 goals, but just one, and then focus on that one goal completely. So, my one goal is that I'm going to try every day to just start with the 10,000 steps. And then once I've done that, then you build on your success. But I have 100 goals I'd like to do, but I'm going to pick that as the one I'm focusing on.
Yeah, I love that that's your one thing to focus on, or that you are going to do just one thing to focus on, because you're right. Like, I think we can get so excited. Well, as
Mhm.
you said, like we get easily excited about
Yes.
everything, right?
Yeah.
And so you can get away from yourself and you don't realize that each individual goal has its own, is going to require its own storage of energy and
Mm.
willpower and discipline. And I think for me anyways, like I overestimate how much of that I have in reserve.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I really like that. It really you have to focus, and
Yeah.
like focus sometimes may be what we lack when we begin and take on any one big thing.
Yeah. So, what is your first step, I guess, in terms of health and wellness, or however you're interpreting that?
Yeah, so like you, for me it's fitness, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of arm of health and wellness that has kind of fallen by the wayside. Um, But in terms of that, my thing is to begin with what I like and build
Mm.
on that. So, when it comes to this health and wellness branch, there are so many options and trends and fads. And over the years, I've gotten really caught up in what everyone else is doing and thinking
Yeah.
that this is going to be the thing. But it always fizzles out when I like try to get super into a regimen without taking into account my own preferences and tendencies, my overall goals, and when I don't realize I can adapt things to suit my own style. So I'll give you a bit of an example of what I mean when it comes to diet. And this is a few years back now when we were doing keto, right? When we were looking
Mm-hmm.
into keto, and keto was really big, or maybe it still is, and I don't know. But in any case, I remember saying that I was doing keto, but then realizing that the banana that I was putting in my smoothie, the yogurt or the kefir that I was adding to the smoothie, those were not keto foods.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I had a choice to make, right? And I realized that I wasn't willing to give up that really healthy part of my meal plan every day, just to stay strictly keto as
Mm-hmm.
the guidelines told me to do it. So then I started just adapting. I would tell people I'm doing keto-ish, which really just put it into a mind frame that was uniquely me and for my life. It meant that I could work in food groups as I needed to, as I wanted to, but I still had a general sense of direction where it was going in terms of a healthy nutritional lifestyle. And because of that, I felt I was able to keep on track with it for a lot longer than I normally would have when I didn't pigeonhole myself into this one way of doing things. And so now I'm trying to take that same principle and apply it to fitness and activity and exercise because I've tried a lot of different things. I know a lot of people who have found that one form of exercise that really gets them pumped up and they love their workouts. And I haven't really found that yet, but I think I may have hit on it. I I ended up really loving calisthenics this
Oh.
summer, so going super
Mhm.
old school, but there's
Mhm.
actually some pretty good calisthenics videos on YouTube right now. So that would be my one thing, is to just pick something that you like and then build on that, because I think when you enjoy something, you'll stick with it for longer.
Okay, I love that. I don't know if you know this, but I saw this in a vintage homemaking group I'm in, that the original like king of calisthenics, I think his name was Jack LaLanne. I'm just pulling that off the top of my
Mm,
head from the 50s. His
okay.
videos are on YouTube. Like you can actually, so if you know how you and I love to go as old school as possible, like you can
Yes.
actually do his 1950s workout videos on YouTube.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. And then, yeah, that combines two loves,
Mhm.
calisthenics and vintage. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I love when we can multitask. Oh, which goes besides your point to
Right. No,
focus on
one.
one thing.
Yes, just
Stay
one.
focused, focused.
But I love what you said about something that is fun. I actually think it's so funny to me that I'm almost oblivious to that. Like it can be fun. It actually
I
can be
know.
fun, right? Like
Yeah.
doing what you do enjoy. I think we actually forget that there can be an enjoyment aspect to our health and wellness or fitness journey. And I remember I think it's Mark Sisson who's like the paleo guy founder,
Mm,
and he does like he loves extreme sports or just even things like extreme frisbee or
mm,
like sailing, like things like that. Those are excellent ways of getting exercise that are fun, right? And so really
mhm.
going, hey, what do I enjoy? So anyways, thank you for that reminder, because there's a few things I do enjoy, but I never actually take that into consideration when I'm making a goal or a plan that I can actually enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's totally true. Like, I don't know how many times I've told myself that I'm going to become a runner now. Like, I'm just going to start now.
Yes. And I'm going
And
to enjoy it. You try to force yourself
that's
to enjoy
right.
it. Yeah.
That's right. And there are things that you can use to help with that, like distracting
Mhm.
yourself with a TV show. But then
Mhm.
another totally valid consideration is maybe that's just not something I'm interested in right now.
Yeah.
But walking, I like. I happen
Yeah.
to really like walking. So do that and don't worry about it. It's you, and you're more likely to say I can do a walk if you're okay with walking, rather than oh my goodness, I don't know if I can run today, if you're not really into it at
Yeah.
the time.
That is awesome. All right. The next area that I know I've dropped the ball in is my prayer life. Now, um, I think it's easy for me to make excuses to myself when I haven't been carving out that daily personal prayer time between me and God, because my family does pray a rosary every day. You know, we do some other aspects of liturgical living. We never miss mass. Sometimes we go to mass a couple times during the week. So I go, well, done,
Mm.
shake the dust off my hands. Look, I did it. But no, that's not the same thing at all as carving out personal prayer time daily. And it doesn't have to be, an hour of prayer. So I spoke
Mm.
with a mutual priest friend that you and I have about this, and he recommended something really simple yet really effective to me. So I'm going to do what he calls the 5 and 5, which is praying about which 5 things I'm thankful for that day, and then reflecting on 5 ways that God tried to teach me a lesson. And then I have to meditate on how I responded to God's promptings or tugs at my heart. Did I listen to him? Did I change my mood, behaviors, or actions? Or did I continue to do something that wasn't good for me or for my family or pleasing to God? So, yeah,
Mm.
5 things I'm really thankful for, or blessings that I recognize in my life, which is right in line with a lot of people trying to work on gratitude, right? Having gratitude at the end
Mhm.
of the day. But then 5 ways to really go, okay, I know God was gently tapping me in such a lovely fatherhood way throughout the day.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did I respond? Yes or no? So I can't imagine how my life wouldn't be changed, right? If I
Mhm.
don't add this in. So yeah, the 5 and 5, that is the baby step I'm going to take in my personal prayer life.
I love that. And I do remember him telling me about this as well. I
Mm-hmm.
misunderstood him. So I started calling it back to him the 5 in 5 because I felt
Oh,
like 5 minutes. And he
yes.
was like, well, it's not
Oh,
wrong, right? Because it is
yeah.
supposed to be short, right?
Yes.
So now I call it the 5 and 5 in 5 because I'm extra like that. And God and I have a little chuckle over my wit every evening.
Well, now I'm going to call that that too. So thank you for that.
Okay, perfect. But it is. And you know what? This actually feeds really well into the one tip that I had in terms of prayer life too, which is to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you keep it simple is because I've come to really see consistency in and of itself to actually be prayer. So,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
tried to work some basics of prayer into my day that are simple enough that I can more or less be consistent in keeping it going. I'll do like short reading of the daily mass readings in the morning and the 5 and 5 in 5 before bed. And then I know, like, if I'm prompted to add anything else in on top of that, then that's great. But these little items, they're non negotiables and
Mm.
they're small enough and they're bite sized enough that I can do it. And that's where the consistency as prayer comes in. Because even with how basic and how little it is, there are still many days where I'm not feeling even that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to pray. I'm really distracted. I can't focus. I have things on my mind that are disrupting my peace. You know, real life, it comes at you fast sometimes. But I'm finding that even offering up the act itself of doing it and acknowledging to God that I'm doing my best, but I have no idea where my mind is at right now, that's a prayer. So, for example, sometimes when I'm reading the daily mass readings, so scripture in the mornings, sometimes it's like lightning bolts are hitting me. Every word is dripping with meaning and relevance. It's exciting, it's convicting. But other times I'm just reading the
Yeah.
readings,
Yeah.
right? And that's all that I feel. And so I'll say to God, okay, well, good. And I'll close the book and then
Thank you.
yeah,
And just
all right.
close. Yeah.
That's
See you
wonderful.
later. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll trust that if there is something in there that I need, he'll bring it back to my mind again
Yes. Yeah.
throughout the day. But I don't beat myself up over it. Don't try to force myself to feel more.
Mm.
Don't try to add on more things to try to whip up my emotions into
Right.
like more fervor or anything like that. I'll just keep my commitments to God. If I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it and I'll show up. And I'll offer up that resolute commitment as a testament to God of my faith and my love for him.
Okay, that was the kick in the pants I needed, so that was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am terrible at consistency, and you're right, consistency is a prayer in and of itself. That really stopped me in
Hmm.
my tracks. That daily offering of your commitment, of your perseverance, right? This is virtue building. That
Hmm.
alone is a prayer, and that is just beautiful. So, okay, Michelle, you've got me motivated.
Yes, good, because now you can motivate me for house cleaning. This is where I need my kick in the pants.
Okay, are you ready?
I am so ready.
So, getting yourself motivated to get up and clean is something that we talk about on this podcast all the time. And it's something I talk about all the time on my own Instagram. And it is a natural strength of mine. But like many of you, my energy levels also go up and down. And so sometimes I too need a little bit of a reminder, a little fire lit under my butt to get up and clean. And so, my favorite way to do that is cleaning in bursts. And the way I do this, the way I clean in bursts, is I set my timer. And we've given this tip before, but I'm just saying it again because it's good every time and it works every time. So, as I said, there's a lot you can get done even while you're waiting for toast to pop. I actually tidied my entire living room this morning
Mm.
while waiting for my toast to pop. And then you might even have a full 2.5 minutes if something's in the microwave, or even longer if water's going to boil. So you actually start with those like 2 to 5 minute little bits, and you kind of get in the habit of working during that time. And when you've seen how much you can accomplish in 2 or 5 minutes, if you set yourself a half hour or a whole
Mm.
hour to clean, it feels downright luxurious. So, yeah, just setting these little time amounts, you start where you need to start, but working in these little bursts. I find half hour is a great burst. I find like you can actually
Mhm.
get so much done in a half hour. And I find like after that, even my motivation starts to dip a little bit. So then you can go do something else. But yeah, just set your timer. You're in competition with yourself and only yourself. And it's just something about having that timer going that makes me get up and get moving and just really see how much I can get done.
Mhm. I remember you telling me about this
Mhm.
like a few years ago, and it really has changed, like how
Mhm.
you see those little moments during the day and how you can use them well,
Yeah.
right? Because you're right, like especially when you're talking about getting things done while you're waiting for the toast to pop or the water to boil.
Mhm.
What else are you going to do
Yeah.
during that time? Like, if even setting a timer seems like a little bit too ambitious,
Yeah.
then I mean, those are things that are already happening that is almost like a gift of time when you have to
Yes.
wait for the toast to pop. I really love looking at it like that.
I remember when I first heard about that, I think it was about water boiling, and I'm sure I shared this before, but the person said, you can't clean your entire cupboard in the time it takes water to boil, but you can clean one shelf. You can take
Mhm.
everything out and wipe down one shelf and put everything back, or one drawer, maybe not multiple drawers, or maybe just your cutlery tray. Like there's actually so much you can do, but unless you've got like started to try it and get into the habit of it, you don't know and have an understanding of how those blocks of time work, right? A lot of that is just that
Mhm.
education for yourself. How quickly do you work? How efficient are you? You'll learn a lot just in that process of how organized is my house, right? If your house is organized, you can get a lot more accomplished in 5 minutes. Um,
Mhm.
and so it really does start to help you. And you and I love doing these types of experiments with ourselves. Like you really start to kind of gather data about how
Mhm.
your house is run, how, like, yeah, what your cleaning style is. But then, yeah, just these little short bursts. You start with that. And then, like I said, if you ever give yourself a half hour, once you've been cleaning in 2 minute bursts, you'll be like, oh man, I can do a whole room.
So yeah, you know what? We talk often about the art of homemaking,
Hmm.
but it's also very much a science,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
that's where the experimentation part comes in. And even just starting to get a feel for how long things take for future reference,
Yes.
that makes you even more efficient because, yeah, if you're testing it out on the 2 minute toast wait or the 5 minute pot boil, then
Hmm.
you know that this specific task, oh, I could get that done in 5 minutes. That's about a 5 minute task. And
Yeah.
then the next time you walk into your kitchen to clean something, you know, like, oh, I can get this done. It will only take me 5 minutes.
Because I guarantee, because this has happened over and over again with me, that many tasks that I think will take a half hour are actually 5 minute
Hmm.
tasks, right? But until you've
Hmm.
done that multiple times, and you're like, oh, it really is only 5 minutes. So yeah, if this is the motivation you need, like really approach it like that type of experimentation and data collection for yourself. And I don't know, I find that makes it exciting for me.
Yeah. And I will say on the side, the opposite can also be true. Just fair warning. Like, you'll go in to declutter your kid's room and think, "This will take me an hour,"
Yes.
and you'll be there 3 days later. So, all in the name of science, just be prepared for both
Absolutely.
sides. Yes.
So, what is your first step in terms of getting your homemaking started?
Yeah, so this is something I've just started doing the last few weeks, really, and it is similar to your tip.
Hmm.
But for me, it's to go an extra mile with the task already at hand.
Mm.
So, one thing that I'm doing to help me get back into those little bursts you're talking about, Lindsay, is to just do a little bit extra in whatever task I find myself already in the moment. For example, if I'm
Mhm.
already wiping the countertops, I'll take an extra moment and wipe down the small appliances too, like the
Yes.
microwave or the coffee maker, or I'll empty the toaster crumb tray. Um,
Yes.
if I'm already putting away groceries, I'll take an extra moment and just wipe down the shelves real fast. Not scrub, not an entire fridge clean out, but I'll wipe it down. Or like this morning, I was putting away the lunch containers into a deep drawer, and usually we also keep like miscellaneous items like extra bread bags or straws in there. And I was having trouble getting the lunch containers into the drawer. So while I was already down there, I just kind of took a couple of seconds, purged a few things, got rid of some bags because there were too many. There always are too many after a while. And now the drawer closes. And it took maybe an extra 2 minutes. And last week when I was putting our homeschooling books on the shelf, I just took an extra minute and quickly went through the books that were already there. And I pared a few things down, one shelf at a time, no pressure, 5 minutes. It's just a lot less intimidating that way, I think. And I know that like there will still be times during the week where I have to set aside more time, like what you're saying, maybe half an hour to tackle bigger tasks and chores. But I am finding that taking an extra moment in tasks I'm already having to do anyways, it's helping to keep things tidy enough. And it gives me a little bit more of that dopamine hit, which will then motivate me to do it again somewhere else. And the clean house spiral will just hopefully continue.
It's 100% will, right? If you think about just that drawer as an example, so if you're spending the 5 minutes while you're waiting for the water to boil, cleaning out that one drawer, pushing it a little bit extra, doing one other thing, and if you times that by how many little tasks you do in a week, my goodness, that's a huge chunk that you can actually get done in 1 week with almost minimal effort. Like it's not effort you notice. It's just becomes second habit. It's that puttering, and we've talked about this before too as well. Like just this idea of like I say, I clean my house through puttering, and so does my mom. Like my house stays clean because of just those little mindless little tasks that we just work in. You know, I'm actually not good at those last couple minutes of a task. You and I have talked about this before.
Right. Yeah.
So challenging myself to do what you're doing, like to push forward and do that one little extra thing would be a great challenge for me.
Yeah. The good thing about that, and this is what I tell myself when I don't feel like finishing the task, let alone going the extra mile, is that often going just that little bit extra, it's going to set you up to actually make the job that much easier next time.
Yeah, 100%.
The space will be more organized, right?
Yeah.
So like next time you go to put things away, you might not even have to go the extra mile because your towels already will fit in the linen closet because you went through it last time. And so, it's like these little cleaning hacks. They really do help.
Beginning can be the hardest thing. We all know this, right? That whole first step, it can be the hardest thing. I know that when Jason and I both hit the couches and we're both staring at the kitchen, it takes one of us to just stand up, right? And then the other one kind of is guilted into it, let's just say.
Totally know what you're talking about.
Right?
Yep.
But it takes one of you to just begin, to just start. And we are consistently reminded that the rest of the work is far easier than just the starting, but beginning anything, you just need that little bit of a push. And it feels so good in all of these areas, praying, homemaking, exercising. It feels so great. And you never regret it, right? You never go, I wish I hadn't cleaned that drawer. I wish I hadn't spent 15 minutes praying. We never, ever regret it. So it's just, if we can just get ourselves off the couch with that first step to do something, it's guaranteed to give us that dopamine hit to make the job easier next time, like what you're saying, right? Every one of these things has an impact on the next time that we do it. We just have to take that first step.
Okay, it's time for our What We're Loving This Week segment of the show. So, Lindsay, what are you loving this week?
Well, you know, I'm still doing my Read All the Classics challenge. It's still going on. And I finally read Little Women. And I know you love this book, right? We'll talk a little bit more at the end about that because I have something else to say, but I don't know why I kept putting it off. Like it's on every list and I just wasn't reaching for it. Maybe I was thinking it's because I love the 1994 movie so much that I'm like, it's good. I feel like I know the story so well. But I decided to read it. So honestly, at first I found it like a little eye rolly, a little overly sweet, a little bland, and not realistic. So much so that I actually Googled to learn a little bit more about Louisa May Alcott, because I'm like, there's no way she's a mother. There's no way.
Right.
The way Marmee talks to those kids, I'm like, there's no way she had kids. And I'm right. She doesn't have kids. She never had
Okay.
kids. But I really loved her whole life in general. So I will, as a side note, second recommendation, you get a 2-for-1 in this, is the
Mm.
History Chicks podcast episode on Louisa May Alcott. Her life was fascinating, and Little Women really is pretty darn autobiographical, if you haven't already figured that out. But I learned that originally the book ended with Meg's engagement, and Alcott wanted to leave the story there, but it was such a massive success that almost immediately they begged her to write a second book. So the 2 books are now what we know of as Little Women, but they were 2
Mm.
separate books. And Alcott herself said that when she was writing the second book, it was a totally new experience. Like, she really felt like she knew the characters in a whole new way, and that she spoke in their voices better. And you can really feel that in
Mm.
the second half of the book, particularly Joe and Laurie's voices. I feel like she owns it in the second book.
Mhm.
So I really loved it by the time I got into the second half. And the one unexpected joy was how much homemaking is talked about. So like homemaking and motherhood. Once I accepted that Marmee is pretty much the perfect mother, I
Yeah.
did allow that to like inspire me, right? To kind of want to increase my gentleness and she talks about having to overcome her natural inclination towards anger
Mm.
in the book. But I found that to be really inspiring. The way that they build the home, the simplicity of it, the very act of the homemaking of the entire family, and then Marmee herself as a mother. So I know you are going to say, Lindsay, it's time to read Little Men, right?
Yes,
Which is
that's exactly what I was going to
yes.
say. Yep.
So I will, Michelle. I'm really.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have said it's the better book. So yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. I don't know if I can say that it's the better book because
Okay.
I'm a little ashamed to say that I've never read Little Women. I
What?
know.
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
But
Okay.
I've watched like many, many adaptations. So
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe I thought I knew the story.
Yeah.
And then I just skipped to Little Men.
Yep.
And then Joe's Boys is the
Yes.
third book. And yeah, I will say, like, story-wise, I loved Little Men, but you're
Mm.
inspiring me now. I mean, I've already read the last 2. I should just go back and read the
Yes.
first one.
Please
And
do.
I do feel like, and you tell me if you think this is a good fit, it seems like a really good hygge book for like the
Oh.
late autumn going into December.
100%. It is
Okay.
like a delicious little read. It's just pleasant. It's easy. You can tell it's like kind of young adult. It was a really pleasurable read. And you know, for the state that you and I are both in, we are feeling a little bit scatterbrained and restless. It is that light the candle, make the cup of tea, and venture into the world of Concord, Massachusetts.
Okay.
So, what have you been loving this week?
Okay, so this summer I took the plunge into the world that is K-dramas, Korean dramas. And I do not regret this one bit. So the backstory is that every summer, some of my good friends from our parish and I get together once a week for movie night. And
Mhm.
we've been doing this for about 6 years now. Usually we watch British period pieces, but this year they were really going on about these K-dramas. And so they couldn't decide between a couple of them which to show me or which to suggest for movie night this summer. I ended up watching on my own the one that we didn't choose. And this one is called Crash Landing on You. And this is what I have been loving. I devoured this show, which is really saying something because each episode is over an hour long. And you really can't be doing anything else while you're
Mm.
watching because you have
Right?
to read
You have to
subtitles.
read.
Right. So, Crash Landing on You is about a beautiful, wealthy South Korean businesswoman who goes paragliding and ends up getting caught in a storm, which ends up depositing her over the border into North Korea.
Whoa.
Yeah. So she's found by the captain of a group of soldiers who are patrolling the border. And he decides that instead of turning her in to the authorities, he will help her find her way back home. The trouble is, she could be a spy. She could be lying. And so by law, he's supposed to turn her in. So he's trying to decide, like, can he trust her? And conversely, can she trust him? Because she just, like, paraglided into North Korea. And so their predicament wreaks all kinds of adventurous havoc and suspense and romance. Of course, romance. So, you know what? I loved this show because it was that perfect balance of everything I look for in entertainment. It has an interesting plot, action, a love story, and a fair amount of comedic moments as well. So it was light. And so I will say as a note, if you're wary about dipping your toe into the world of K-dramas, I will offer you this comparison by way of encouragement. I'm finding K-dramas to be the Korean equivalent to Hallmark movies and TV shows. So if you're a fan of those, you will definitely not have a problem becoming engrossed in a K-drama, and I highly suggest that you start with Crash Landing on You. Okay, that's going to do it for us this week. If you want to get in touch and chat with us about our topic today, you can find us on our website, www.themodernlady1950.wordpress.com, or leave us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Modern Lady Podcast. I'm Michelle Sachs, and you can find me on Instagram at MMSachs.
And I'm Lindsay Murray, and you can find me on Instagram at Lindsay Homemaker.
Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.